Welcome to The Beat. I'm Ari Melber, and we are tracking these volatile markets. CEOs now calling it a Trump recession. There's mounting revolts over the flailing tariff plan. Opposition is getting louder from MAGA allies, from top Republicans, from these Wall Street leaders. And coming up, we have a special report on MAGA voices who've been losing money. So we're going to get into that. But all eyes are on the new tariffs that dropped from Trump tonight, which have also been dropping the markets. So this backlash, what happened today, was up and down, while still down trillions overall since this all kicked in middle of last week. And then by the end of it, you're going to see sinking to new lows.
It is 3 a.m. in Beijing, where, according to the White House, in just 9 hours, the world's second biggest economy will be blasted by President Trump's tariff bazooka.
We're living in crazy town right now, and the markets are swinging wildly. There's extreme volatility.
After trillions of dollars wiped out in a days-long tariff spiral, U.S. markets are starting to bounce back.
Obviously the markets remain volatile.
Stocks are surging today following a volatile session yesterday.
The tariff turmoil is prompting economists to revise up their recession probabilities.
You outlined just how dramatic the open has been in Europe this morning. It's not overstating it to say it's carnage or a bloodbath.
Carnage, bloodbath, new lows after what were new lows. So, you know the old expression about not being a day trader. That's generally a negative because you have to look at long-term realities and not the hourly reverberations. But if you were a day trader, today was another bad day, coming off several days where we've lost over $6 trillion. I mentioned you coming up, and you see it on your screen, that we have this MAGA buyer's remorse segment where we look at, in a special report, how some prominent MAGA voices are talking about the millions they're losing and telling their audiences about that. So we're going to get to that, which has political implications. But first, as we are going to continue to do as long as this is the big problem, self-induced by Trump in America, I'm going to show you the numbers. The top 500 companies, down 12% since Thursday, losing over another point today. The Dow Jones, down 11% since Thursday and losing just about a point today. This is, according to many, unsustainable. And if you think about government policy, the White House or the president can do X, Y, Z, or nothing. Keep in mind that these trillions we've lost because of something that Donald Trump announced that many of his advisors, Republicans and experts, said was a bad idea, has brought about the greatest crash since COVID. So of all the things you could do, I'm not going to name them, but X, Y, Z, or nothing, everyone who knows anything about this says it would have been better if Trump did nothing. Would have been better if he just went on vacation for a week than this. And that's the context for the growing rupture among Republicans. The House now has more Republicans who want to potentially defy Trump by trying to limit at least his tariff power. And remember, it is rare in the last 70-plus days that I come on the air, any of us anchors come on and tell you about Republicans wanting to limit anything by Trump. But this one, apparently a bridge too far for some. Remember, over in the Senate, 7 Republicans have already signed on, specifically put their names on the line in their home state and saying, yeah, even if Trump is popular or they're worried about a primary or popular in a red state, they sign on to at least check the trade authority and what many see as costly tariffs. Both parties also grilling Trump's trade representative today. This was from a Republican senator.
I understand that you are the trade rep. So if you own this decision, then I'll look to you to figure out if we're going to be successful. If you don't own the decision, I'm just trying to figure out whose throat I get to choke. If it's wrong.
Who gets choked? Meanwhile, Trump's Treasury Secretary was at Mar-a-Lago this weekend. There's reports on what the goals were there. Politico saying the secretary's view is the markets will keep melting unless you shift. You have to talk about negotiating. That would be an off-ramp to the current plan, by the way, and quote what the end game is. We've got top CEOs saying it's a moment to own up to a colossal mistake and change course, or America will face ruin for years to come. Another mega donor, super influential Republican, Ken Langone, says the whole thing is just BS. Another very influential Trump supporter who knows his way around business, whether you want to hand the keys to the business people at all times. This is a business problem we're facing. He is a supporter, and he just says, look, it was a huge mistake. Let's fix it. Elon Musk using his power to directly appeal to Trump to, again, try to at least back down, back off, or completely reverse course if they can get him to do so. And this brings us to a figure you may recognize from many past Trump stories, Peter Navarro. His expertise or his portfolio, he says, is trade. This is his thing. He's one of the lead advisors on the tariffs. But Elon Musk is saying he is, quote, dumber than a sack of bricks and a, quote, moron. Those are Musk's terms, not our terms in the news business. And Mr. Navarro has been on this program before and is welcome to come back. We've talked about many topics, but this was a conflict that involves a lot of personal attacks. Mr. Navarro saying Elon Musk is nothing but a car assembler, not a real car creator. The truth is that in the role as lead trade advisor, Mr. Navarro has been kind of more in the thick of it now than ever. And as you may recall, he's been in the thick of many Trump stories, but his approach on tariffs is also drawing some jokes.
Is this a negotiation?
The president made it clear yesterday this is not a negotiation.
Let me make this very clear. This is not a negotiation. This is not that. This is a national emergency. Okay, it's a national emergency. It's not a negotiation. Well, I don't agree, but at least I have some clarity now.
The tariffs give us great power to negotiate. Always have.
Notice that's one of those Daily Show jokes or punchlines where he just showed actual footage and then made a face. But basically, whatever Mr. Navarro was asserting there was undercut by the president. Nicole Wallace mentioned this once in some of our coverage. Mr. Navarro, by the way, has what they call hawkish or strong views on tariffs. The buck stops with Donald Trump, who apparently has sent people out on what looks like, at a minimum, being as fair as possible, mixed messaging amidst these failures. That was the same day that Navarro also said in writing, it's, quote, not a negotiation. The buzzword negotiation matters a lot because either we're stuck with this, which is why Wall Street and others are so concerned that Trump could stubbornly just leave us in this spot indefinitely, and those trillions wouldn't magically come back. Nobody thinks that. Or he would, in some way, change course. Negotiation is one of those key words that can sound tough or diplomatic, or anyone can be open to negotiation in theory, but negotiation to what? To something other than these massive market-rattling tariffs. Now, on top of all that, the White House posted and deleted its X or Twitter share of the Navarro op-ed about the negotiation. And he's not the only one, to be clear, facing this type of whiplash. Consider this, a Republican pollster saying Trump was elected to lower inflation, juice the economy. Higher prices and slower growth, which is what the tariffs are doing, is the, quote, opposite of what Americans voted for, end quote. Then you go out to the country where many people, many Americans, whether they're highly invested in the markets or not, are concerned.
This is not what people voted for. I know people that voted for Donald Trump. This is not what they voted for.
I went to a county that Trump won by 20 points. Hundreds of people showing up and saying, I'm a Republican. I voted for Trump, and this is not what I voted for.
I vote for Trump is not what I vote for.
We are just on the very front end of that part of the sentiment. The investors are panicked, as you can see. But what happens in the stock market always takes a while to reverberate in the real economy. You can watch the news and the anchor can say 6 trillion, gone. But they haven't started firing people yet over it. Some of the market indicators and some of those bankers are feverishly pleading for a change because they hope that if all of this were back down or even fully reversed, that within a couple weeks, some of those trillions would come back. Then you'd have a wait and see period, still a self-induced problem for the American economy. But after that, maybe things would get a little better. That's a best case scenario that is far from guaranteed. The alternative is we stay in the holding pattern we've been in with 6+ trillion gone and the market's continuing to tick down. I haven't even gotten into the bond market, which has to do with the fact that some investors now think that Donald Trump's America is not as credible when it comes to paying off its long-term obligations. That this isn't necessarily the America you remember. So you can have a stock market down, a bond market down, inflation up, prices up, you get into a recession or a super recession, and yeah, a lot of jobs will be gone. And a lot of regular Americans will say, where did this start? If you follow the news, you'll be able to tell them. Well, partly started January 20th when he took over, and it really started last Wednesday when he started burning up the global economy. And they might ask you back, who thought this was a good idea? And you'd have to honestly say, No one, just about no one, except the president. So that's all the facts we have and some of the reaction. Next, I want to turn to something that is so important with the political realities, whether more Republicans sign on, whether Trump's tariff authorities are limited, which could happen. What happens in our democracy that has been so downgraded? Well, interestingly, some of the most prominent Trump supporters and MAGA voices are losing millions in real time. They're honestly sharing about it, to their credit. That's part of what they say to their audience. Hey, I'll keep it real with you. And the repercussions are something you have to see to believe. I'm going to show you that on the other side of 90 seconds.
Kind of hard to feel a lot of sympathy for them.
Yeah, I'm voting for Trump.
They ordered the turd soup and then said, waiter, there's turds in my soup.
Donald Trump just cost me $20 million or whatever he did.
Then they came back 4 years later and asked, y'all still have that turd soup?
Stephen Colbert's punchline is on many people losing money as Trump's tariffs crash the markets. And there isn't a red or blue America when a president's policies wipe out what you see here, part of the $6 trillion losses in days. Everyone loses. We have new evidence right now showing the backlash to Trump's flailing trade war. That backlash is broad. From the bankers and CEOs I mentioned and quoted some here at the top of the show, to political leaders in both parties. Plus this weekend's protest, which tapped into the wider anger there. You can see the sad emoji with a crashing retirement account and the failed policies that those protesters say are hurting Americans and small businesses in real time. Now, then there are still many people who, of course, avoid traditional or credentialed press. This is what CNBC looks like if you turn it on the screen here, but people may not see that kind of news coverage of the tanking markets. There are people who consume alternative, younger media. That's as a cultural matter, or what you've heard about, some of these MAGA-friendly podcasts and streaming shows, and that's a political matter. And a different set of voices rules.
One bite everybody knows was a volley. 7-7. Good, solid.
Most companies have all these different requirements, and they're openly allowed to discriminate against especially heterosexual white men.
The attempt to feminize men is ongoing on the left.
Check out this rap and let me know your honest thoughts.
I think it's incredible. I think it's incredible.
That's from one of the streaming shows there. And a Tesla Cyber Beast retails for about $100,000. The young man you see there, Aiden Ross, would have a harder time buying one now. Now, he's supported Trump and even scored a coveted interview, but he now complains with the tariff crash that he's losing money, that he feels, quote, poor after all this, which is part of a wider backlash from MAGA podcasters and streamers. And let's be clear, many of them speak to their audience in an unfiltered, authentic way in real time. That's part of what draws their audience. Now, they have MAGA credentials. I'm showing you, they have this past talk about supporting Trump's promise for the country, but many of them are now sharing with their huge audiences, which can number in the millions or tens of millions in the case of Rogan, who I showed earlier. Well, many of the ones you're about to see, they're sharing concern, panic, confusion, and even disgust over the cost of Trump's flailing trade war.
Yeah, I'm voting for Trump. Trump has put his tariffs all over the place. I've been trying to understand them. I don't. And everything's in the because of it. Donald Trump just cost me $20 million or whatever he did. Maybe don't be on the golf course.
Everyone in this room, everyone loves you. And I just want to say you're a true hero for this country. I don't know how many of you guys are invested in crypto or stocks. What the is going on with our country? Guys, why am I poor?
Because Donald Trump is the nominee against Joe Biden. I won't just vote for him. I will walk over broken glass to vote for him. His giant tariff policy that he just dropped on the market unilaterally, probably unconstitutionally.
This is a vivid demonstration of very well-known prominent Trump fans, whether they're in your feeds, as they say, or not, going through their own personal experience of the harm of these Trump economic policies as their viewers watch. And this shows how the medium is still the message, that Younger viewers might see their favorite commentator reacting to the markets in real time, kind of like a popular YouTube reaction videos, or sometimes there'll be a video of someone cooking or a dog doing a trick, and then someone else reacts. That's how some people are getting these bad market updates, learning how bad things are in reality. And it is hard to dismiss these last 5 days as some, quote, snowflake old media conspiracy when very MAGA-friendly new media are live streaming their pain.
Donald Trump just cost me $20 million or whatever he did.
What the is going on with our country?
Maybe don't be on the golf course.
Guys, why am I poor?
Now, losing 20 million means you have more than 20 million. Trump's richest backers are losing even more. The tech titans from the inauguration, who had criticized Trump before, remember, who had given public warnings about exactly the type of governing failures we've been seeing now, they're down tens of billion with a B. The one who lost the most has actually been the most involved. Musk on the right losing over $100 billion in the past few months alone. It's hard to even get your head around the numbers. This theme runs from those tech elites to the MAGA podcasters I showed you to some of the most seasoned Wall Street insiders. Take the hedge fund leader and Trump backer Bill Ackman, who made a lot of news this week by bemoaning how the tariffs from Trump are leading to a self-induced economic nuclear winter. Total reversal, I should say, from his post-election vow that Trump would do nothing to interfere with America's economy.
We're stepping into, I would say, the most pro-growth, pro-business, pro-American administration I've perhaps seen in my adult lifetime, certainly. President Trump will do nothing that interferes with the success of the country, the success of the economy.
He will do nothing. That was post-election. That was just over 100 days ago. And yet, what Ackman is referring to, the quote I read you that's new, tariffs causing an economic nuclear winter. The tariffs are from the guy Ackman wanted elected. He's literally telling people, hunker down for an outcome which he recently backed and rooted for, which is Trump's return to power. So let's zero in on this for a moment with all the buyer's remorse. With the public Trump endorsement and everything else, is Mr. Ackman facing the tension between nuclear-level problems and loudly campaigning for Trump? Sort of. I mean, this is about economic policy, but anyone following politics knows the storyline here. I bet you've heard countless Trump minimizers make a similar claim. They don't believe Trump would do what he said, so they don't have to worry about it. Or what about all the other extreme opposition to him that overjudges and criticizes him? And they don't think he'd really break laws or try to steal an election or pardon violent convicts who attack the police. They don't take him literally. This is a familiar political rhetorical argument which requires treating the president as deeply unserious. Again, I'm describing how some of his backers have made this argument. They would have you believe that Donald Trump is unserious, not a quote adult, that he's someone you don't believe, or would be a quote unquote liar, because they have to tell you they don't believe he would do the thing that he repeatedly says he would do. Ackman, now part of this larger money-losing team, who said they just didn't think Trump would tariff like he said he would. Ackman also goes further in addressing this. He claims it was actually unforeseeable that Trump would do what he said he would do on tariffs, posting, quote, "I don't think this was foreseeable. I assumed economic rationality would be paramount. My bad." All right. And yet, might be or not, it was somehow foreseeable to other people, some of whom are, of course, Trump critics or in the opposition to Trump and MAGA, some of whom are just nonpartisan individual experts or journalists who try to track what he really does and how he operates. And we have a long record now for that. Because many other people knew that it was foreseeable if Trump campaigned on pardoning convicts like he vowed that he would, and he did. Or that he would try to use power to punish opponents like he vowed, and he's doing now. Or that he would flout court orders and not care about limits on his power, from immigration to tariffs to other features of the presidency, because he said he would, and he previously dodged 4 different indictments like he vowed, and he did. So, added together, just a couple quick examples, yes, it was foreseeable that President Trump, if elected, would tariff like he said he would. One might say Trump had been very clear he wanted to tariff like it's 1930. That's a kind of a Prince Smoot-Hawley reference. You know, tariff like it's 1999. I can't hear the audience in the back, but I'm sure that 1 out of 1,000 people appreciate the reference. The point is, I don't usually do Prince combined with Smoot-Hawley references. One might say that if this wasn't such a serious news night and costly news week. So, all right, we'll put Prince aside. But here's how the very serious Nobel economist Paul Krugman dismissed that kind of rhetorical wobbly defense, which I'm telling you about because this is part of our reality. And Trump's got a few years left in office. Krugman writes, these ultra-wealthy backers are shocked to discover that Trump is who he always was. While the Times' Michelle Goldberg notes many investors did delude themselves about Trump because they either leaned right or they wanted lower taxes or they just hoped the money would keep pouring in, so they looked the other way. And now the sell-off is feeding a buyer's remorse in the selective memories. And for voters who may not follow every single story, they are on to this one, and that will only continue if the markets keep tanking and the recession risk rises. Trump voters are finding all that talk of lower prices and prosperity has not been Donald Trump's stated priority. Instead, he's warning of more pain while he golfs. The markets are down on the tariffs, with warnings of a wider recession risk rising. So some were in denial that Trump would tariff exactly like he planned. Some were in denial about Trump himself, a lesson that they could ignore at their peril, given that Trump is currently saying he'll hold power past 2029, which is illegal. So if you didn't believe that he would do the pardoning, and you didn't believe he would do the tariffing, and you didn't find that foreseeable, then buckle up for a president who, while in power, is saying he's, quote, not joking, and he intends to rule past 2029. Our job here is to look at the facts together. Don't delude yourself out of those facts. Other people did see the risk and the impact. Politically, the bad news for Republicans dates to an old law of politics, popularized by President Reagan, but it's been reportedly said or in circulation from far earlier. The saying is, a recession is when your neighbor loses his job. A depression is when you lose yours. In other words, how do you experience it? Well, millions of people may be personally experiencing these impacts. Whether you're rich enough to be a podcaster who says he's out millions, or you're just someone trying to get by. It's always different when it hits you. And there need not be any glee in any person's pain or loss. I say that whether they are MAGA or not MAGA, whether they are American-born citizen or immigrant, whether they're being hurt by Trump's stubborn, flailing tariffs policy and they live in this country or they live somewhere else. No glee in the pain. But those podcasters are experiencing what they sometimes call in the vernacular L's. Losses. Trump is making many people in America take a giant L. That's not in doubt. You can look at the markets, you can look at the numbers, you can look at your retirement account, or you can listen to MAGA podcasters who are talking about losing so much that one of them feels, quote, poor. But as always, life is about what we do with it, what's happening, what we experience, what we might be learning. Will these losses also be lessons? A different type of L. That's the other big question about a crisis that has just begun. And a crisis that, remember, if you want to learn from, even MAGA bankers tell us is a crisis, a giant L, that is Trump inflicted. We are joined now by former chief economist in the Biden and Obama White House, Jared Bernstein. He also chaired the Council on Economic Advisors. Jared, help us understand what we're seeing, having gone through the charts and some of the reaction.
We're seeing a market meltdown now that, as you've suggested, has wiped out $6 trillion of wealth because this trade war is deeply unpopular, deeply misguided. It's driven by a set of not facts, but an alternate reality that Trump and his advisors are putting themselves in. Obviously, investors are very unhappy with it. Consumers are spooked. Anyone with a 401k is really anxious, and understandably so. One number that came to mind while you were talking about this was last year in 2024, our trade deficit, all told, all in, every country, our trade deficit was $920 billion, right? Match that up against $6 trillion of lost wealth. That's kind of like burning your house down because you didn't feel like taking out the garbage. Now, look, maybe those trillions will come back if the market, if they reverse course, but they're deeply dug in.
So put those numbers in perspective for us. The president has sold this partly on a very broad or crude view of this imbalance. And you're saying, even if you can agree or disagree on that, but whatever you think, the cost here is much higher. It dwarfs that so-called imbalance.
Right. The pain thus far is orders of magnitude greater than any gain. And, of course, we haven't seen gains. We've seen losses. Now, what the administration tells us is that on the other side of this pain, there is a reindustrialization of the American economy. I find that to be completely non-credible, as does almost every other trade economist I've talked to. One good way to think about that is the country, think about Germany, Germany. They have a trade surplus, all right? 6% of GDP. That's a very large trade surplus. They also have manufacturing employment declining as a share of total employment, just like we do. As economies move, as they evolve from manufacturing towards services, as manufacturing becomes increasingly productive, you're going to see that kind of shift. So Trump and his team are operating from a playbook. I liked your, Smoot-Hawley Prince allusion there. They're operating from a playbook that is absolutely no longer valid in today's global markets. They're trying to unscramble a globalization omelet, and they can't do it.
You might be one of the few people watching, and we're happy to say we have over 1 million viewers. You had YouTube, we usually have several million. You might be one of the only people watching who liked the reference, Mr. Bernstein. It was tortured to go from Prince to Smoot-Hawley, but these are intense times. But it also speaks to Mr. Ackman, the hedge fund manager, talked about rationality. But you've served in the White House. We have a lot of smart, informed viewers who followed this man. They understand, best as I can tell, that when he said he'd pardon, he would. And when he said he'd do other extreme things, he would, or he'd try, unless he was stopped. Now that Wall Street seems to be catching up to that, what are the further implications? And how would that affect the so-called negotiations or off-ramps? If in X amount of time, they start signaling, we're going to wind this down, nothing else to worry about, can they get it all back? Or is there a greater self-induced market cost to the lack of credibility in America's economic leadership under President Trump?
I think there are two layers of losses here. One is the simple market reaction. And by the way, every time you get a rumor that they might be dialing back or willing to negotiate, we do see a positive move in the market. Now, I can't predict how many trillions would come back if they would take the off-ramp. I suspect many investors would feel quite relieved. But what I will tell you is this. There's another layer that's very, very damaging. And this is the idea that you cannot trust America to do business with you. Our trading partners are correctly viewing us at this point, at least under this president, as an extremely unreliable partner who is waging a completely unnecessary, unforced trade war based on algebra that's nonsense divided by 2 in ways that are demonstrably and explicitly trying to really take apart a global trade system that has been in place for many, many decades. I don't know how to put it any other way. And I think that kind of damage is lasting and something we will feel for a long time. I wish it wasn't the case. I wish I could give you better news on that, but that's the way I see it.
Is nonsense divided by 2 still nonsense?
Well, I guess it's half nonsense, but yeah, it's still nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, look, people who follow this have seen you for a long time. I've covered and talked to you for a long time, Jared. You're not histrionic, right? You're not a drama king or a drama prince, to go back to the earlier segment. And you're telling folks how this works. There's a huge cost to this. I don't hear you to be saying it as anything about your feelings about Donald Trump's other issues. You're giving us the economic cost to go ahead to nonsense.
Further.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'd go a step further, Ari. There is a rationale to trying to help our manufacturing sector, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of people out there, a lot of communities who lost factories in globalization, who would like to see that kind of opportunity come back. And during the Biden administration, we tried to incentivize investment in key sectors, electric vehicles, certainly clean energy production, and so on. And in fact, factory production doubled over our watch. And so, that was working. The problem with the problem with this pain now, gain later, is that there is no gain on the other side of this. We saw this in Trump 1. These methods that they're applying, these sweeping tariffs, they don't work. There are a lot of simple reasons why they don't work. For one, our manufacturers import a lot of inputs from other countries. So what they're doing is making manufacturing here a lot more expensive. Ask yourself why the price of a Ford truck is supposed to go up $10,000. That's a Ford truck. It's an American truck. It's because they import much of their inputs.
Yeah.
That's what I mean when I say they're trying to unscramble a globalization omelet at tremendous cost to the present and to the future.
Yeah, understood. Jared Bernstein, I told you we keep calling on you, White House economics veteran. Thank you. I'll tell folks what's coming up, an update from the Supreme Court, and Ted Cruz and others also turning on the tariffs. We have a top Democratic U.S. Senator here next.
I had some money in the market. It's now depleted. It's probably half of what I had. All right. And it seems like it's going to get worse. It's a tremendous effect on me.
I mean,
the fact that you used to go out and, go to a dinner occasionally, you can't do that no more. Oh. No, I have a car that's got to be replaced. I'm not going to replace it now. I can't afford it.
Senior in Florida discussing the immediate impact. We're joined by Democratic Senator Ed Markey from Massachusetts. He's ranking member on the Senate Small Business and Entrepreneurship Committee. Welcome, Senator.
No, great to be with you again.
Great to have you. We've run through a lot of the results tonight and some of the political impact. Let's talk about Congress. Is there a role here to address this, to slow it down, to stop new tariffs? And where do you stand on the bill I mentioned, which has some Republican support?
Well, Senator Cantwell has a piece of legislation with Senator Grassley that already has 7 Republicans who have signed up. Senator Wyden has a privilege motion that he wants to bring out onto the Senate floor, which will deal with Congress's sentiments, strong sentiments, as each minute goes by on what Trump is doing with his unguided missile of a global trade war, which he has opened up. So Congress is going to start to speak in the House and the Senate. I think that what's happening is people are hearing from back home, because it's not just a global trade war. Trump has also declared domestic trade war on Main Street in our country. 1/3 of all exports and imports are conducted by the 30 million small businesses in America. And they're going to be profoundly impacted by this. They're having a Pepto-Bismol moment in the marketplace. They're holding on to their stomachs right now in the same way that finance ministers around the world are, just wondering what are the implications for them. Congress is a stimulus response institution. There's nothing more stimulating than Republicans hearing from Republican small business people saying that this is very dangerous to them. And I think that's what we're beginning to see. And I think bipartisanship just might start to break out on the House and Senate floor.
And what is your party telling the country? let's wait and see, let's give it time, or you're going to use all powers to act and try to stop further tariffs if you think this is bad policy?
Well, this is catastrophic. We want to end this as quickly as possible. It's clear that when Musk and Navarro are fighting, that this is just absolutely a chaotic situation in the White House right now. They don't have a common view of what is happening. And ultimately, if the Congress doesn't step in, if it doesn't start to speak as to the harm which is being done domestically to small business people, because their business is not up on the NASDAQ or the S&P or the Dow, but we have 30 million small businesses in America, and 97% of the companies who trade internationally are small businesses. So they will have their voices registered. And I think as each day goes by, the seismic readings of Main Street are going to start to register in Republican offices here on Capitol Hill and back home in the states that are going to be impacted.
Yeah, striking. Well, we wanted to get that view from the Hill as some of these rumblings are increasing, and there's a lot on the line. Senator Markey, thank you very much. We're going to finish a quick break and come back with that Supreme Court update. Stay with us. The market crash has taken up much of our news hour tonight, but we also want to give you brand new updates on some key legal cases in the Trump administration, which derive from the many ways they're pushing boundaries, testing rules, and sometimes breaking the law. A big rebuke for the Trump administration today, a federal judge ordering the administration to basically restore the AP's access to White House events, demanding they be placed on a level playing field. That is a court, a judge getting involved in the normally more open debates about reporter access and who gets to go into which side of the White House. But the problem was the view that the administration was basically punitive. The courts aren't uniformly for the plaintiffs or challengers in these cases. Take a look at this headline. Supreme Court halts an order that would have reinstated the federal probationary workers fired under the efficiency Trump-Musk cuts. The High Court has also cleared the path on deportation, basically disagreeing with a lower court judge who had blocked that removal of the individuals sent to El Salvador, including the controversial invocation of wartime powers by the administration. Now, as I've told you many times, we're tracking these cases as they go. They are not over. There's no final merits resolution on all of this, but the government will be able, in the meantime, to continue deportations. They must also have court-ordered detainees be given reasonable time to challenge in advance before they're thrown out of the country. That's the due process point that I've told you matters. Meanwhile, the Attorney General responding today.
It will be a much smoother, simpler hearing, and these people will be deported. Americans are safer, and domestic terrorists, foreign terrorists, you better look out because we're coming after you. I'd start self-deporting if I were you, because we're going to find you.
Quote, we're going to find you, the DOJ, talking about its law enforcement capabilities there. On the High Court, we saw a split that we're seeing more often. If you look at this, you basically have enough votes to win the bare 5, the 3 against, but the partial dissent is from a Trump appointee, Barrett. And remember, Roberts was in the majority with Trump today. If Roberts ever swings, they suddenly don't have all 5 when Barrett holds out. This is the coalition we've told you that has emerged just this year, at least on some cases where the president is testing the limits of his powers. Justice Sotomayor cautioned against today's ruling, saying the U.S. citizens could now be taken off streets, forced onto planes. History is no stranger to such lawless regimes. This nation's system of laws is designed to prevent, not enable that. And I want to mention this case is complicated because of some of the underlying facts. It's not one of these quote-unquote black and white things. Indeed, we heard that before this ruling from a veteran Trump DHS official that we invited on to discuss the details of that case. Flights took off without what was the apparent due process. What's to stop the government from doing that to other people? And they say, oh, we didn't know it was an American.
Well, again, I don't know that I agree with you about the lack of due process. But again, that's going to be up to the government to say, here are the assurances that we put in place. We need to make sure that we are moving the right people to the right place. And that's incumbent on the government to do that. But the latitude and the discretion that the president has is I would say, is wide in this case.
When it comes to law, the point is not whether you agree or disagree about whether that's a good thing, but was that an accurate reference to law best we understand it? And in fairness, the Supreme Court here, not in a final ruling, but in a ruling on the way, would seem to agree with part of that point. While Barrett and the dissents were very concerned about due process, a point we've covered, the larger idea that the president, any president, does have pretty wide latitude in this immigration area is also part of current law. Whether he can do it by claiming war powers is the bigger question that we're going to see when that case gets up to full argument at the Supreme Court. We'll be right back. Turning to some items about our MSNBC family on TikTok, where we all share so much, MSNBC has been nominated for a Webby Award in News and Politics. You can go to msnbc.com/Webby to vote as a shout out to so many of our colleagues. And while we're talking digital, one of our favorite guests, Harlem artist Dave East, shouted out this very program. He said on MSNBC, I got Ari with me in a song, and we have online for you a new drop. You can get a special edition Beat mug with his lyrics on MSNBC, I got Ari with me, or you can get the dad hat version. You don't even need to be a dad, a mom, or a parent to wear it, but you can see on MSNBC, I got Ari with me. Go to msnbc.com/beat5. That's msnbc.com/BEAT and the digit 5. And you can see all of the merch, including, of course, the classic mug, the original wine glass, and these new lyrics hats if you're interested. Thanks for watching.